All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our EAL program, Parent Coffee. Like we do with all of our parent coffees, we are going to start with our community norms. And the main one I want to focus on is centering the student experience. As we keep students at the center, here are a few things I want us to keep in mind as we do our coffee today. One thing, we are going to honor the growth process. As your child learns English, they will learn English in a timeline that works for them. So sometimes I know it's easy to compare, oh, this other student is learning English faster. Just honor your child where they are as they learn. We also want to make sure we are enjoying who your child is right now. And we want to use a strengths-based approach. That is something we encourage our teachers to do when we talk about multilingual students learning any language. They still know a lot. They know a lot in their home language. And they are learning English, yes, but they already know so much in whatever home language you guys speak at home. All right, here is our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about who is in the EAL program, who is the staff. We'll talk about the structure of the program and which assessments and when assessments happen. And then we'll talk about ways to support learning at home. And we'll have question and answer at the end. There is coffee, there are bananas, there's cinnamon rolls. Please, if you feel hungry, please go back and get some. All right, my name is Shuli De La Fuente Lau. I'm Language Acquisition Coordinator. You have probably been getting emails from me. And I'd like to introduce Jen Foss. She's Director of Student Support. So if your child is also receiving learning support, you may have seen her around. Here are our EAL teachers for each grade. Just take a second. Some of you might already have been receiving emails. So just putting a name to a face. For example, if you are in kindergarten, you would only be getting communication from one EAL teacher, either Miss O'Day, Miss Christina, Miss Olivia. You would not get communication from both. Your child would only be working with one EAL teacher mostly. There may be times the grade level teacher works together, but you will have one focus main EAL teacher. We also have instructional assistants and assistant teachers from kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2. So your child may be receiving support in the classroom, or if in a world language class, they might be receiving support from these assistant teachers or IAs. All right, we're going to talk a bit about the program review. Here is our EAL program philosophy, and I'll show you it in English and Chinese in a bit. But we are committed to fostering effective communication across multiple languages and cultures. We acknowledge and know that your child is coming in with so much knowledge of their home language, of Chinese or Korean or Japanese, whatever you speak at home. So we recognize they're already coming in with so much. Our goal is to help them develop their English language skills. And here it is in Chinese and Korean. I apologize if the translation is not super accurate, but I put it through a translation app. All right, so we have 3 levels of support. Foundational support. Foundational support are for students who are beginning to learn English. So usually this might mean if your child has only been learning English for less than 2 years, okay, or maybe a year, they might be understanding English listening but are growing in confidence to speak. Students may be receiving intermediate support, and these are for students who are mostly comfortable with social language. This is language like they can talk on the playground, they can talk with their friends, but they're really beginning to learn academic English language. And transitioning support is for students who are mostly independently engaging with class content. These are students who are towards they're more fluent in their language acquisition journey, right? And students who are in this level are oftentimes students who are functioning pretty independently in class, but their teachers every now and then might notice, oh, they might still need a little support with grammar writing, or they might still need a little support with some comprehension. Okay, but we want to make sure that teachers have an eye, oh, please make sure that you're still supporting these students. So for each level of EAL support, I've divided into 3 types of support you might see. First, we'll talk about the world language block. In elementary school, every day we have 40 minutes of world language. For foundational support, students attend an English world language class at that time. They have a little extra practice as they learn English. Intermediate and transitioning support students will either attend Chinese or Spanish world language. EL teachers, instructional assistants support in the classroom students who have foundational and transitioning support. For students who are in transitioning support, homeroom teachers will be supporting them with their English language acquisition. And a big thing that teachers do is because we want students to have support throughout the whole day, is they are working really closely with the homeroom teachers to make sure they are planning with them. If a teacher is teaching a science lesson, they are thinking, if I was a language learner, what might I need? Maybe I need a little bit more explicit vocab, or maybe a sentence starter to help me speak in English. So they do a lot of planning with the homeroom teacher, and this supports all students in the EAL program. This is how EAL program looks across the grades in elementary. We have all supports for kindergarten to grade 3, and only intermediate and transitioning for grade 4 and grade 5. If you are a kindergarten family, I know there wasn't EAL support in the ELC, and that is because students are learning English through play. But when they join kindergarten, it gets more academic. So it's important that we provide that support so students can engage with academic content. All right, so if you have a student in foundational support, you might be wondering, so what happens in that world language English class? World Language English is for students who will receive foundational support. It's a small class that happens during that block. It could be it's much smaller than a homeroom class. It's on average around 10 students, okay, or less, or a little bit more, just on average. And the main focus for kindergarten and first grade is speaking and listening. It's a chance for students to really grow in confidence, to speak, to understand, not just words, but sentences, two-step directions. Okay, oral language is really important in kindergarten and first grade. And then in second and third, the focus is still on speaking and listening, but because it gets a little bit more academic in those grades, we focus on phonics, grammar, writing basics. All right, we talked about support in the classroom. EAL teachers come in, EAL instructional assistants come in and support in the classroom. And these are the skills we're really wanting to help your student. Listening, reading, viewing is more like interpreting academic information, speaking, writing, and representing. Representing means basically showing their work in more than words, maybe with a graph, other representations. And so support for this from the EAL teacher is for students in foundational and intermediate support. A lot of it might not be super obvious to your student because it happens a lot in the planning stage. And we don't want students who are receiving EAL support to feel like, oh, it's so obvious you're getting EAL support in a class. We really want to make sure it's embedded and part of the classroom environment. So sometimes it might be co-planning and the homeroom teachers in a way to make sure that English learners can comprehend. Or sometimes the EAL teacher might be teaching a part of the lesson. The main focus is on building academic English skills. And it may include small group or individual support based on the student's needs. So for example, if your child needs support in writing, but is pretty strong in reading, if an EAL teacher comes in and that lesson is really focused on reading, if your child is pretty strong in reading, they would be getting support from the homeroom teacher or the other IAs. So they really only get support where they need support. Okay? And it's really part of the classroom, as you can see in this picture. It might be a small group, right? We just really are paying attention to what your child needs for that lesson and making sure the teachers meet that need. I talked about how EAL teachers also plan with homeroom teachers. So what does that mean? This is for all students in the EAL program. The main focus is to make sure that the curriculum units have English language acquisition skills. So is it when you're teaching about science and the science word is classify, for someone who is learning English, they might not know classify. It's not a word you use on the playground. So EAL teachers, when they're planning with the teachers, might say, hey, let's take a pause. Let's make sure we define this word. Classify means to sort into groups. Okay, what does that mean? Let me see we need to add a picture so it's easier for our students to learn. Here's a picture of classifying, sorting. For students who know the word in Chinese or Korean or another language, sometimes that is put up as well. So when they're planning, they're making sure we add in these things in the lesson so that students have an easier time learning English. I see a lot of you taking photos. You can keep taking photos, but I will be sending the slide deck and a recording of this on email next week. So don't feel like you need to memorize everything now. Okay, I'll send it so you can refer to it. All right, there is a fee for foundational support. I'll talk a little bit about the process of it and the rationale. So we acknowledge that students, especially in kindergarten and first grade, might grow a lot in a short amount of time. So in August, EAL teachers and homeroom teachers have taken observations, collected data to make sure that foundational support is still appropriate. And for a majority of students, it is. Okay? But for some students, if they're like, oh, actually, you've grown a lot in the summer, you might not need it, then that's when we might move students out. But this is not typical. A majority of students will stay at the level assigned. And then after that, we do have a one-time annual non-refundable fee in September. And the reason for that is it allows our program to make sure we have enough teachers to support your student. We assume that most students in foundational support will be in foundational support the whole year. That is the assumption, but students grow at different rates. So some of your students may exit foundational support in the middle of the year. I know the process has been different in the past years, but it will not be refundable even if you exit. And the reason is because we're making sure we have staffing for the whole year. The fee is heavily subsidized by the school, and at other Singapore international schools, the fee ranges from about 5,000 to 12,000. And it allows SAS to accept elementary school students who need English language support and provide the support needed. All right, some of you might be like, okay, how long is my student going to be in the EAL program? Okay, so this is based on research. It is typical for any language learner, any multilingual student, to take about 6 months to 2 years to learn what we call social communication, right? This is, I can talk on the playground, I can tell you what I like, what I don't like, I can tell you about my family, okay? But it takes about 5 to 7 years for any multilingual student to learn academic language, complex language. So that's correct grammar structures, being able to have discussion. Like I showed the word classify before, being able to say, oh yes, I can classify these items based on their properties, language like that in English. So it is typical that most students spend about 1 to 2 years at each level of support. All right, we'll talk about how students get placed. So we know your student is dynamic. We do have a standardized test, but we do use multiple data points to make sure that placement is accurate. When your student entered SAS, they took a EAL test. If your students were in pre-K, we did it in person for kindergarten, but it was a screener. We looked at their language background. We say, oh, this student might need this level of support. Every February, there is a WIDA test. WIDA is the assessment name. And that indicates placement for the next school year or exit from the program. We also make sure we're getting input from EAL teachers and homeroom teachers. Because we're also looking at how is a student in the classroom. Even my own child is in Chinese immersion, and she talks to me in Chinese, but sometimes in a school setting, even if she knows that sometimes she's not as comfortable saying it, right? So teachers really try to see what a student can do, but sometimes the setting does matter a little. So EAL teachers are looking at that too. We really want to make sure students are accurately placed throughout the school year. That is important to us. Like I said earlier, most students will be at the same level of support all year. But data is collected throughout the year. Students grow, like I said in my first slide, they grow at different rates. And so at the end of every quarter, EAL teachers are making sure, if my kid's in intermediate support, is that still good? Are they still at that level? If needed, there might be recommendations to give the WIDA test to qualify for movement earlier than February. But again, so some of you might be hearing, oh, this student exited halfway through. It's okay. Your student learns at their own stage, but this might happen. But for 90% of students, I'm just estimating, most students are just staying in that same level. Okay? But we do make sure that throughout the year, it is still good placement. A little bit about the WIDA test. We test 4 things: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening and speaking is our priority for kindergarten. Okay? So do not worry about your kids reading and writing yet in kindergarten. They will be learning in class. Our big goal for the younger grades is oral language. That is the foundation. The stronger you are in oral language, it helps you become stronger in reading and writing. It says here, take note of each of these unique skills. It can vary for each student. So, as you know, your listening comprehension might be really strong. Sometimes writing takes some more years to develop. So you might be thinking, oh, my kid speaks all the time in English, and that's great. But if their writing in academic English in class needs support, they might be in the program a little longer just to make sure that they're really successful when they do exit. Right, this is too many words for you to see, but there are, in the WIDA, there are 6 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. This is just a kindergarten example. For foundational support, generally, students who are scoring at a 1 or 2. So these are students who may be saying single words like cats and dogs. They might say cats meow, dogs bark, right? These are students who are generally at 1 or 2. Intermediate support is generally levels 3 to about 4.5. And you can see their language gets a little bit more complex, right? They're using more adjectives. They're able to be more precise with their language. My pattern is blue, red, blue, right? This is for kindergarten. And then transitioning support is generally 4.5 to 5. So again, this is just like any standardized test. We take a look at the whole child. Some of your children, if they perform in listening all the way here, but their writing is more a level lower, we take a look at the whole child and just make sure that holistically, before we move them, they are pretty strong in all the areas before movement. So it takes many years to learn a language, as you all know. The explicit EAL instruction will help your child be successful as they move through SAS. We want them to be prepared in middle school and high school. Currently, and this might change, but currently there's no EAL support in middle school and high school. So we really want to make sure in elementary school, by the time they graduate, they can be really independent with their English work. By providing support, we're allowing students to grow in their skills so they can engage in the same things as their peers. We also want students to enjoy school. So I just want to say that sometimes it feels like, oh, I want my kid out, right? I don't want them in this program, but we really want to make sure that whatever support we're giving, we're making sure your students can feel really confident, right? We don't want your students to not get support and be struggling or feeling like they can't do it. And the teachers are really good at making sure whenever they support, they're doing it in a very seamless way. Okay, we're not saying, oh, EAL student, come, I'm going to work with you, right? We're working side by side. So sometimes your child might be like, I don't know what my EAL teacher do. And that's intentional because we really want to make sure they still feel very much a part of the class. All right, pause here. I know we've been talking a while. Some of you were asking, how do I support my child at home? All right. Research shows that if their home language is not strong, it takes longer to learn English. So, if you speak Chinese at home or Korean or Japanese or another language at home, keep speaking it to them. It is okay. Because sometimes what happens is parents feel like, oh, I'm just going to speak English, and then the student gets to second, third grade, and then their home language proficiency is not as strong anymore. Okay, so we will work on the English at school. Just keep speaking to your child in your home language at home. They can learn several languages at once. And like I said, it is easier to learn English when they have a strong foundation of your home language. Sometimes, like with my example of that science example of classify, sometimes students, when we put classify, sometimes teachers put the Chinese word or the Korean word, and some students say, I don't know what that is, right? So we want help them build their academic language in your home language. Oral language is important, so tell stories, watch shows, right? Read books in your home language. And ask questions about the books. Story elements, like what's the problem in the story? Or how did this character change? Or how is the problem solved? These are skills that they will do in English in their class. So if they've had practice doing it in your home language, they're like, hold on, my mom or my dad talked to me about this. I know how to do this well. Maybe I'm still finding the words in English, but I know this skill. Help your child understand the structures of your language, like radicals, words with the same sounds, homophones, even grammar. In Chinese, I know, when you want to indicate past tense or future tense, the verb doesn't change, right? But in English, the verb changes. You add an ed, you add an ing, you add an s. The verb changes a lot. In Chinese, it doesn't change. So when your child understands that, hey, in Chinese, the verb mostly is the same, but in English it isn't, it helps them. We call that meta-linguistic awareness. It helps them know these languages are different. And in English, I need to really pay attention to the tense of the verb. And it's okay, but having them be aware helps them build those connections. So when you're going out and about, we call this concept translanguaging, meaning it is okay if your child speaks English or Korean at school. I know sometimes we feel like only speak English at school. But for a child who is learning a new language, not being able to access that language at school makes it feel like they don't know how to express themselves. But if you're at school and you know the word for chair, right? Chair in English, and if you're in class and you say 椅子, it's okay, right? Help them find the connection. So maybe at home or when you're about, right? If you speak some English, you can help them make those connections, right? If you know a little bit of English, we can read a book in English and retell it in your home language and back and forth. We really want students to make connections between both languages. When playing a game, maybe ask your child, can you alternate speaking in English, and then when it's your turn again, speak in your home language, and then next turn, speak in English. Just make it fun. Maybe if you're going somewhere, right? We're looking around. Tell me that word in English. Tell me that word in your home language, right? And I know a lot of you are already doing this. So a lot of you are like, okay, I don't really speak English. I'm not confident in reading in English. That's okay. There are lots of resources out there that the school provides. So if you don't know access to this, ask your teacher. You have access to Epic or Raz Kids. Okay? Sorry, it's a little it's a little choppy, but it's an app that looks like this, and when the story is read to you, the English words come up too. Okay, so that's helpful for your child to put sound, what they're hearing, to words. If your child watches TV, right? Put in the English caption. I'm going to email this, but there are a few family resources that WIDA does put out. Okay, you might want to take a look at them. I have it in 3 languages. But overall, there are lots of ways to support your child in learning English, even if you are not speaking English at home, and that is okay. All right. I know some of you might have questions that were answered in this slide deck already. Are there questions that were not answered yet today that you would like to ask? If you have questions, please raise your hand.
Yes. Do I need this? Okay. Yeah, I just have a question that you cover about the weather test. Is WIDA or weather? WIDA. And I'm just wondering for the students who's in the EAL, do they get a test in map? Yes. They get test in map. Okay. For which grade does the map start? Oh, grade 3, okay. And also another question for phonics, because everything they also learn phonics at the EAL, and for phonics, it's just to sound it out, the spelling part. And till which grade or which age is it acceptable for them to have still wrong spelling and the accuracy for spelling?
Good question. The first question is MAP test. Everyone takes MAP test starting in grade 3. That is the standardized English test that everyone takes. It is not WIDA. WIDA is just about learning English. Her second question was they're learning how to sound out words and spell words in phonics. How long is it acceptable for them to still be spelling words incorrectly? It takes many years. Even I, as an adult, sometimes misspell words, right? So we really want to look at the complexity of the word. So if it's a simple word like cat, k-a-t, every single sound is pretty clear. That is simple. If the word is more complex like questions, in English, t, I, a, n, s. That's how you sound out the word in isolation. But in English, you say shuns. There's no t sound in that, right? It is a complex word. So if your students are misspelling words that are more complex, that is okay. So I would say generally around 2nd and 3rd grade, you'll see more accurate spelling, right? Kindergarten and 1st grade, super normal for any student, even if they're not an English learner, to be trying their best at sounding it out. What we tell all parents is try not to focus so much on the correct spelling, especially in kindergarten, 1st grade. Because we don't want kids to feel anxious that they don't know how to spell correct and that they don't write. The more important thing is okay, sound it out. You see it spelled incorrectly, you're like, if it's like cat, help them sound it out properly. But if it's a more complex word, it's okay, keep going, right? We don't want them to feel so anxious about getting it perfect that they stop writing. Yeah. Any other questions?
Our home language is Japanese. I found my kids struggle to share what happened at school because there's a translation involved. Do you have any suggestions as to how kids, you know, yes.
Question was, how do we get kids to talk more about their school day? I think this is a question that any family encounters, even if they speak one language at home. Kids have a hard time talking about their school day. I would suggest, like I tell any family, is try to think of a specific question. Instead of saying, how was your day? You might ask something like, who did you sit next to at lunch? All right? Or, did you read a book today? What was the book about? Or, was someone really kind to you today? Or were you kind to somebody? So try to be a little bit more specific, and then I think students might be more willing to share. I also find, I heard from parents and even my own experience, sometimes asking them right after school ends is hard because they need time to unwind. Sometimes they'll talk more during dinner or right before they go to sleep. But I think your question is very common for any family. Yeah. Yes.
So we know some of the EAL support teacher, they don't speak like the student's home language. So I'm just curious, how can they support the student in the classroom, especially, for example, my kid is in the foundational support. So how can the teacher explain to them if they doesn't speak their home language?
How can they learn if they don't speak your home language? The EAL teachers are trained and equipped to teach language even without knowing your home language. Just like I did here, if I'm talking about chair, I might show it, right? I might show a picture. I might ask you if you know it in your home language, right? So they are equipped with skills to teach specifically, they are equipped with skills to teach in language acquisition. So I know it might be a little easier if they know Chinese or Japanese or Korean, but actually sometimes it's different from just translating, right? We don't want a teacher that just translates everything. We want teachers that teach skills so students are independently doing it on their own. So they do have a lot of strategies and scaffolds, like I talked about, visuals, pictures, sentence starters, right? Sentence starters are essentially like if I ask you to say in math, tell me how you know the answer for this math problem, right? They might teach the sentence frame. The answer is 12 because, so they might give the beginning part so the student has a little bit more, we call that in education a scaffold. They can help start the sentence and then tell it in their own way. Yes.
Hello. The question is that I think the EO language, EO class will take the same time with world language, right? So that means world language program might fall behind, right? So is that a plan for world language? Because we don't want to the native language is falling behind.
That's a good question. If a kid is foundational support for 2 years, right, then when they start world language, will teachers be able to adapt? We have a few levels for world language, right? But also, that is something that we are aware of, which is why it is important for us, once a student does not need foundational support anymore, they exit. So we really pay attention to that data. But the teachers are equipped and know that students coming in later in the grades, they will adjust for that. Yeah, so there are different levels, and like in any class, in education, we see a differentiate. We make sure that we meet students where they are. But if you have a student foundational support, right, this is why I talked about home language literacy. Still read books in your home language. Still talk in your home language. Those are building those skills too. If you have a question in Chinese, please feel free to raise your hand too. The interpreter can help.
Thank you. So my question is, so I'm a Chinese father, and currently the kid is going to the Chinese world language. We select that because basically the school makes a suggestion that since we are Chinese and they assume we want to put kids into Chinese world language. But I do understand that there are a lot of Chinese kids is going to Spanish. So I don't know what is the general advice from the school for a Chinese kid, whether it's good for him to go to Chinese world language or Spanish, or how do you see the general situation? So are they going more kids going to Spanish or the Chinese? What is the situation right now? So this is the first question. And second is the easy one. Can I answer it first and then you can answer? Sure.
Question is about placement for world language, Chinese or Spanish. So the school does not place you just because they assume you're Chinese to want Chinese. You probably don't remember because there was a lot of paperwork. When you applied for your student at SAS, you filled in a box that said what world language would you like your child to learn. So likely it was marked Chinese, right? But I understand there's a lot that you are applying for, so if you forgot, that's okay. Every spring, there is a chance in the e-news, a form will come out. If you want to switch world language, you can indicate, and the next school year you can switch world language. So your second question was about how many students are doing Chinese and how many students are doing Spanish. I don't have the numbers now. What we do know is a lot of families want their kids to still have strong literacy in Chinese if they are Chinese speakers. And so do sign their students up for Chinese, especially if their goal is to go back to their home country. You want your child to be able to read and write. A lot of parents do that. Some parents also want to learn Spanish, and that's fine. So depending on numbers, sometimes if any world language class is full and your kid exits halfway in the middle of the year, it is unlikely, but if that class is full, you might have to do the other world language for that time being. And your second question?
Thank you. Second is a very simple one. So let's see the fee for the fundamental level is covered. So will that fee be the same for intermediate level and transitional level?
There is only a fee for foundational support, no fee for intermediate or transitioning. Any other questions? It's okay to ask in Chinese. Yes.
The fee you mentioned for September, I think I already paid for the whole year for EL. Is that the additional fee or?
Oh, good question. So moving forward, like next school year, it will only be charged in September. Some of you, especially if you're new to SAS, finance did charge you in the beginning when you applied, whether that was the spring or whenever. So if you were already charged then, you would not be charged again. Yeah. So yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So for the intermediate and the transitional EAL support, will the kids have the time and opportunity to go for the word class? Okay. So just have
Yes, everyone gets world language. Foundational support just gets English, but intermediate and transitioning gets Spanish or Chinese, your choice. Yeah.
我想问一下，就是如果小朋友他的英语的这个学习已经可能比较早的完成了一部分，现在课堂上已经学习过的，就是他可能已经学习了一些了，然后可能已经掌握了。那么在 EAL 他有没有更高的支持，或者是我们在课堂上的教学有没有分组教学？
I understood some of that. Can you get her to translate?
If the child has already kept up with their pace of learning in class, I wonder if there is like a differentiation in class where they are split into small groups to cater to their different abilities.
Yes. Teachers are very equipped to make sure your child gets what they need. And throughout the day, if it makes sense in the lesson, there will be small group instruction for everyone, not just students in EAL. So, for example, in writing, sometimes a teacher might be like, oh, this child really needs to work on capitalization. So the teacher might pull a small group, and that might be anyone, not just EAL students, to help that child work on that. Or in math, if your child is really struggling with multiplication, they might pull a small group. Or if your child really knows multiplication and they need to extension, a small group is pulled. So that happens throughout the day. The groups are flexible and they're based in data. They're based in what your student can do. Any other questions? All right, it was really wonderful seeing you all. I will email the recording and the slide deck so you can refer to it. There is a lot of food at the back, so please take some to go. And we'll see you around. Thank you all.